we had another Malaysian speaker talk about some of the cases. So I will actually go to something different. Now the question is in terms of, can you show my first slide, please? Now with regards to the talking about human rights and environment, in certain cases kind of things, the first slide at the bottom there's a picture of this bird, the helmeted hornbill, which is a critically endangered species. 150 left in Thailand, maybe around the same number in Malaysia. Who protects that? You know, and then in terms of this thing, can we go on to the next slide, please? Now, in terms of lawyers in Malaysia, interestingly, lawyers in Malaysia, our concern, our primary objective is uphold the cause of justice without fear or favor. And now the Malaysian bar, for example, has got 20,000 over lawyers. They are all members of the bar. And one of the things that we have actually come out is that. And so the thing is, in terms of in Malaysia, the lawyers are united. And we have gone out even to the streets, organizing peaceful assemblies to campaign. We had 3 major ones which saw the attendance of at least about 2,000 lawyers coming out there. You know, the pictures are there in terms of this thing. And so that itself kind of things shows that something that has happened, so that in terms of convincing the bar. So this is a call to the other countries, is that in the sense, can you convince your law associations and your bars to also uphold the cause of justice, uphold and protect human rights and the environment? That's one thing. Now the bar is actually not just speaking out. Next slide, please. Bar is not just speaking out. From time to time, we are democratic organizations. Our elections are held once every year. Once every year, we change our council. And during this time, we also pass resolutions that are binding on the bar from that time until it gets revoked. So the thing is, one of the things that I wanted to share with you was that in 2014, we have a resolution on environment and climate change. You know, we are calling in terms of the bar, calls on the government, and the bar is working on it for effective enforcement of environmental laws. Urgent legal reform were required, including ensuring transparency and proper public consultation with all stakeholders, and not allowing ouster clauses to prevent judicial review. That means even after the minister has made a decision, we can still take the matter up to the court to challenge a decision of the minister. So now this is just one example of the resolution and how lawyers operating beyond just in cases, but becomes also human rights defenders protecting the environment and promoting the rights, human rights and environmental rights. Now, I'd just like to talk in terms of some of the realities, hurdles, and needed reforms that we are actually looking at. Next slide, please. Now, the biggest problem with regards to especially environmental rights or rights associated with the environment is ignorance of the law and the available rights. This, the people themselves are not aware. Because in terms of any decision making or by the government department or ministry, the people have a right to actually object to the decision, and that objection would have to be taken into account by the authorities. If the authorities decide the objections is not valid and keeps it out, then you have a right to appeal to the minister. And then you have a right, if the minister's decision is still also not satisfactory, then you have a right to take it up to the court. Many people are not aware of this. So sometimes what happens is that, you know, because that in itself is actually, you know, is a problem, so that the people sometimes, when the whole thing is already done, that's very this thing. The second is in terms when the law or the government itself hides or removes some of these people's consultation participatory rights. Like, for example, the environmental impact, EIA, impact assessment. Okay, there are two sets of things that requires environmental impact assessment. But in the list number 1, it says, do not require public display and public comment. That itself is wrong, because in the sense that it actually cuts off the people from participating in the process. Point number 3, theft of people's right of participating in decision making. Malaysia is supposed to be a democracy, but the reality is Malaysians in their local villages or even the local smaller communities, they do not democratically elect their leaders and representatives. In the local government or the local council, again, the Malaysians don't have the right to actually democratically choose and elect their local council or the local government people's representatives. All these are politically appointed by the state authorities. That means, and this is a problem, because when it comes to actually approval of the people, the government or the authorities go back to these political appointees. And they, without consultation of the people, will sign a letter, give a document says, we consent, we agree. And of course, there is speculation that there could be a lot of other things. Maybe one is a worry that they might lose the power. They might not be appointed further. They might be kicked out by the government of the day, and somebody else will be politically appointed. There's also the factor in terms of money. So that is number 3. Number 4, can we go to the next slide? Now, bad laws that really do not protect the environment. Let's take endangered species. Not only wildlife, but also plant life and all these kind of things. Now, if you look and study in terms of these laws basically criminalize hunting and trafficking of animal parts and so on and so forth. But it is not protecting the habitat. For example, when you look at the helmeted hornbill kind of things, if you don't protect the habitat where it lives and survives, are you being concerned about protecting this endangered species? So in the sense that this is the trend in Malaysia, possibly also in terms of other jurisdictions, that we need to change this and move towards protection of the habitat. Next point, the role of government is confused. Now, the government is supposed to administer, it's supposed to ensure justice, it's supposed to be the monitoring body. But what happens when it is the government itself that becomes the business interest? And either it's a statutory body, or it's a government-owned company, or there is a government-linked or controlled company. So when the project, for example, of forestation, deforestation, or logging project is given to the government, now who is going to play the independent role of actually monitoring and ensuring that human rights and this thing? Because the government is in conflict. Do they protect their companies or their potential source from this so-called economic activity, or do they protect the best interests of the people? So that is a problem. Because in a recent case that I was involved in for a short while, in terms, the project was given to the state statutory body. And on top of the state statutory body, who sits there? It's the chief minister. So in terms of protest, appeal, whatever itself is being, all this are being considered and decided upon by the state government or the state government departments as to whether logging be allowed or not allowed. So how fair, how independent would such government authorities be in this such situation when this happens? So will they be with the people, with the environment, or would they be with the profits that they're going to get from exploiting the forest? That is the thing. The next point is terms of people's fear, culture, consciousness. Now, in terms of generally, when it comes to environmental rights, even when your rights are violated, many people are afraid to actually go forward and challenge the government or the authorities. They are worried about repercussions. They are worried about whether their children will get government scholarships. They are worried about their housing rights and all this kind of things. So that is a real concern. And then there is also the culture that exists. In terms, Malaysia might be a democracy, but in terms of reality, people still behave as though it's a feudal state. Replacing the king and the royalty are the new political leaders of the community or the government. So the thing is, the culture is actually, in terms of any issues whatsoever, they will take the easy way out in terms of trying to appeal to the government or to the member of parliament from the ruling government party to change. So by doing this kind of things, they don't actually fight or struggle for their rights effectively. And many a time their protests and their comments actually can and will be suppressed. So that is this one. Then of course there's also the other risk, and there is also the question of challenging or enforcing or defending or your rights and so on and so forth. If you take the process to court, for example, the problem of the biggest worry is in terms of cost. Who is going to bear the cost? Because when 8 people of the community, do the rest of the community actually support these 8 people? Do they all come and pull in their resources so that, okay, this is what you're going to fight? And in the courts, what happened is that for every little application that you make, and the court actually dismisses that application, they penalize the people by awards of cost. For a country that has got a minimum wage of 1,200 Malaysian ringgit, in the cases that I've recently been monitoring, is that they issue cost of 5,000 ringgit, which is a lot of money for the ordinary people. And there's not much of a resource, because unlike Thailand, Malaysia does not have a justice fund that actually, provides, allows the people, especially the poorer communities, to be able to access money given by the state so that they can ensure some sort of fair trial, a fairer trial when you are competing against corporations and businesses who are much well off in terms of resources. Now, in the recent forestry case kind of things, the other problem that I discovered was lawyers, the issue of lawyers and conflict of interest. Many lawyers and your law firms actually don't have much ability to get their own individual clients. So they end up becoming members of panels, legal panels of banks and legal panels of state institutions. So if you are a legal panel of state institution, or whether it's a local government legal panel or whatsoever, then you become conflicted. Like in this logging case in Pahang, the license holder is the Pahang State Statutory Body Managing Director. So how to take up that case? Because you are also this thing, and then you have got a secondary consideration that comes into picture. If I take up this case, I might lose my panelship and my regular source of income from other issues. So that is basically some of the points that I wanted to highlight. Do I have any more time?
I believe that you have plenty of information that you would like to share, but can we move to the other panelists? And if we still have time, in the discussion, you can continue sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Hector, for sharing your insight.